Amid the chaos of the Crusades, an excommunicated emperor did the unthinkable. He reclaimed Jerusalem without spilling a single drop of blood. While other kings launched bloody campaigns, Frederick II used intelligence and diplomacy to achieve what entire armies had failed to accomplish. But how did a man rejected by the church itself manage such an extraordinary feat? In this video, we're diving into how Frederick II defied the norms of his time, using strategies that felt more like modern geopolitics than medieval warfare. We'll explore the context of the Crusades before his arrival, his relationship with Sultan Al-Kamil, and the behind-the-scenes negotiations that changed the course of Middle Eastern history. Get ready for a strategic journey where war was fought with words, not swords. At the start of the 13th century, the Christian and Islamic worlds were locked in a constant stalemate. The Crusades, which began in the late 11th century, had already triggered multiple military campaigns to conquer and reconquer Jerusalem. But the Holy City was no longer under Christian control. Since 1187, when Saladin defeated the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin, Jerusalem had returned to Muslim hands. The Christian response came with the Third Crusade, led by Richard the Lionheart, Philip II of France, and the German Emperor Frederick I. Despite major military victories, the Crusaders failed to recapture Jerusalem outright. A peace treaty between Richard and Saladin allowed Christian pilgrims to visit the city, but Islamic rule continued. By the 13th century, another crusade was underway. Pope Honorius III was pressuring Christian monarchs to reclaim Jerusalem for good, and that's when Frederick II entered the stage. Unlike previous leaders, he wasn't obsessed with glorious battles. He was after practical results. But he faced a unique challenge. The church itself had excommunicated him, complicating his political position even further. Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire was no ordinary monarch. Considered one of the most educated rulers of his time, he spoke multiple languages, supported science and philosophy, and had a pragmatic approach to governance. But to the church, he was a menace. His independent thinking and refusal to blindly follow papal authority earned him a reputation as a heretic. Frederick had promised to lead a crusade to reclaim Jerusalem, but repeated delays and his refusal to obey direct orders from Pope Gregory IX led to his excommunication. It was an unusual situation, a Christian emperor leading a crusade, officially banned by the very church that had launched the Holy Wars. Many saw him as a hypocrite and believed his crusade would never happen. But Frederick wasn't one to fold under pressure. Even excommunicated, he decided to go through with the mission on his own terms. Instead of assembling a massive army and waging a bloody campaign like his predecessors, he chose an unexpected path: diplomacy. Frederick was determined to reclaim Jerusalem without shedding Christian or Muslim blood. This move shocked allies and enemies alike and enraged the Pope, who didn't want an excommunicated man achieving success in a religious endeavor. So Frederick set off for the Middle East with a strategy that would forever change the history of the Crusades. When Frederick arrived in the Middle East in 1228, he found a complex situation. Previous Crusades had left a legacy of deep mistrust between Christians and Muslims, but Frederick saw an opportunity few had considered before: direct negotiation with Muslim leaders. The Sultan of Egypt at the time, Al-Kamil, had his own problems. Internal power struggles and the strategic burden of holding on to Jerusalem made the city more of a liability than an asset. It had become a flashpoint for endless conflict, and keeping it under Muslim control meant inviting constant Christian attacks. Frederick, ever the shrewd strategist, used this to his advantage. Instead of marching his troops into battle, he proposed a deal. He promised that if Jerusalem was handed over peacefully, he would not lead any future crusades. Al-Kamil, who had already entertained the idea, agreed to negotiate. The result was one of the most unexpected treaties in Crusade history: the Treaty of Jaffa, signed in 1229. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Nazareth were returned to Christian control with one crucial condition: Muslims would still have free access to their holy sites within the city. Unlike every other major conquest of the Crusades, this one was achieved without bloodshed. Frederick II entered Jerusalem in triumph and crowned himself king, since no church representative was present to legitimize his rule. The symbolism was striking. An excommunicated emperor had reclaimed the Holy City without battle and without papal approval. However, rather than securing his place as a Christian hero, this feat would unleash a wave of conflict and betrayal. If Frederick II hoped to be hailed as the great liberator of Jerusalem, he quickly realized that not everyone welcomed his diplomatic victory. Pope Gregory IX, who had excommunicated him before he even left Europe, was furious when he heard about the deal with Al-Kamil. To the Pope, Frederick was nothing more than an arrogant heretic who had seized Jerusalem without the Church's permission and had the audacity to crown himself. But it wasn't just a religious issue. Many knights and nobles who had joined the crusade expected glorious battles and the chance to loot wealthy cities. To them, conquering Jerusalem without war was nearly a betrayal of crusader ideals. What's more, Frederick hadn't regained all the territory of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and the city remained vulnerable without a strong military defense. Frederick tried to consolidate his position in the region, but quickly realized he lacked real support. Even within Jerusalem, Christians were divided. Military orders like the Templars and Hospitallers viewed him as an illegitimate ruler, not a savior. To make matters worse, while Frederick was still in the Middle East, the Pope's allies launched an attack on his territories in Italy. The situation became untenable, and the emperor had no choice but to leave Jerusalem to regain control in Europe. As he departed, Frederick knew his victory was incomplete. He had reclaimed Jerusalem without bloodshed, but now faced enemies within his own faith and empire. His dream of holding the city without a permanent occupying force was quickly fading, and, as expected, the truce with the Muslims would not last forever. Frederick II's peaceful conquest of Jerusalem was remarkable, but its longevity was questionable from the start. The agreement with Sultan Al-Kamil established a 10-year truce, giving both sides time to regroup. But without military backing and with deep divisions among Christians, the city stood on shaky ground. After Frederick left, infighting among the Crusader nobility further weakened the Kingdom of Jerusalem's rule. Resistance from the military orders, especially the Templars and Hospitallers, prevented any efforts to strengthen Christian control. They viewed the truce as a mistake and didn't trust the Muslims to uphold it. Meanwhile, the Islamic world was also shifting. Sultan Al-Kamil died in 1238, and his successors did not view Frederick as a reliable ally. As new threats emerged, Muslim leaders began organizing to retake the region. The turning point came in 1244, when a group of Turkoman warriors known as the Khwarezmians, now allied with Egypt, attacked Jerusalem. With no significant Christian forces to defend it, the city was recaptured and Islamic rule was restored. This marked the end of effective Christian control over Jerusalem until the late Crusades, which never managed to reclaim it permanently. By then, Frederick II was embroiled in his own European conflicts and unable to intervene. His dream of holding Jerusalem through diplomacy alone had collapsed. In the end, his groundbreaking approach showed that negotiation could prevent bloodshed but without force to back it up. The results were unsustainable. Still, his story didn't end there. Frederick II's legacy as a strategist and controversial ruler would leave a lasting imprint on medieval politics. Frederick II remains one of the most complex figures of medieval history. While his attempt to end the Crusades through diplomacy ultimately failed, he is still remembered for his strategic brilliance and ability to govern. As Holy Roman Emperor, he didn't limit himself to religious issues. He also implemented sweeping reforms that helped shape European politics for decades. Frederick was an exceptional figure for his time. Despite his clashes with the Church and multiple excommunications, he proved that diplomacy could be more effective than brute force. His pragmatic approach to the Crusades, negotiating directly with Muslims to secure peace in Jerusalem, reflected his desire to avoid needless bloodshed in favor of smarter solutions. In many ways, he anticipated modern diplomatic practices, showing that a well-crafted treaty could achieve more than a bloody war. But Frederick was also a warrior emperor. In his quest to maintain control of the empire, he faced constant opposition from the Church and rebellious nobles. He waged major battles in Italy, clashing with popes, rival leaders, and even other German states to keep the Holy Roman Empire united. At the same time, his internal reforms like the constitutions of Melfield to modernize administration and make the empire more efficient. He was also a patron of the arts and sciences, building a court that attracted scholars and intellectuals from across Europe and the Middle East. His vision of a centralized, intellectually vibrant empire stood in stark contrast to the medieval ideal of religious authority over politics. Yet after failing to hold Jerusalem, Frederick returned to Europe isolated and with little chance of mounting a new campaign. His bloodless conquest may have ultimately failed, but he never stopped seeking alternative paths to achieve his goals. His relationship with the Catholic Church would remain one of the most turbulent aspects of his reign. As Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, Frederick constantly challenged papal authority, leading to repeated clashes and excommunications. His confrontations with Pope Gregory IX and, later with Pope Innocent IV, cemented his place as both a revolutionary ruler and a divisive figure in both Europe and the Middle East. Frederick II's unique approach to the Crusades, marked by diplomacy over warfare, set him apart in an era dominated by religious zeal and military conquest. His ability to reclaim Jerusalem without bloodshed was unprecedented, showcasing the power of negotiation and strategic thinking. However, the lack of support from both the Church and his fellow Christians, coupled with the volatile political landscape, ultimately led to the collapse of his achievements in the Holy Land. Despite these setbacks, Frederick's legacy endures as a testament to the complexities of leadership and the potential for alternative paths in achieving political and religious goals. His reign challenges the traditional narratives of the Crusades and offers a nuanced perspective on the interplay between faith, power, and diplomacy in medieval history.